just say, up front, because talking to Aaron or Sheriff Hansen up here, that depending on when you do it down the border, you're all going to have a different take, or you're going to have a different take at some point in time. So the experiences I have are from a year ago, and there's a lot of smart people and a lot of smart cops down there trying to deploy resources to try to, deal with the situation. So my story is a story from a year ago. I'm interested, the last year, what Aaron has to say about this, what he has seen. But I would say this, just high level wise, from a law enforcement standpoint, we have seen, I started law enforcement back in 2000, and Matt came along shortly there at that time, and Aaron, I don't know when you started law enforcement, but between China and Mexico, just drugs alone, I just want people to kind of put some things in the back of their head a little bit. It just looked like an ounce of methamphetamine way back in the day. I remember I started in 2000, a quantity like that would be about $2,000, and you'd have it for a purity about 40 or 50%, right? A lot of the meth back then was meth that was homegrown here in Iowa. And, I remember in our little meth labs, a lot of people remember that back in the day, right? Sides of roads, or where the case might be, they go to your local pharmacy. But because of a long-term border crisis that we've had, a long-term open borders, and what we've done smart up here in the Midwest and other states, they're putting the Sudafed behind the counters, locking down lithium batteries. We've made Iowa and Nebraska a hard target, so to speak, in the Midwest to manufacture those horrendous drugs here. But the cartel and overseas actors decided to take advantage of it, right? So just put that in the back of your head. Quantity of meth like that, when I first started, about $2,000, about 40% purity. Now you can get it for about $400, and it's about 95, 99% purity, right? Like when everyone knows that show Breaking Bad, that was a big hit back in the mid-2000s or whatnot. Like literally the southern border across there is Breaking Bad. And so when we talk about, everyone knows someone who's been touched by drug addiction, right? And I kind of put that story out there, like, it's neat to look at not neat, but like everyone likes, we're all on our phones or on TV now, where, we see these visual images at the border, and we're like, man, this is chaotic. We see all these things, in the local communities, like this doesn't feel quite right. But the reality, it's like when we talk about our drug problem today, this is a problem that's been building for a few years, and it's primarily laid at the southern border there, right? So when we talk about we're all border states, I leave you all with that, or start off with that type of analogy there. But just from a law enforcement standpoint, what we see on narcotics, it's darn near all southern border crossing, right? Like you just don't see that anymore. So that's why it's something close to us here at home. So a year ago, I was sent down with my day job with state police, part of contingent with state police and National Guard, to go help Texas authorities try to deal with the crisis that they have. And one of the things I leave everyone up front is that this isn't something new that started in the last few years, right? Now, the numbers and the volume that we've seen of illegal border crossing has certainly surged in the last few years, but Texas has been engaged in Operation Lone Star since the mid-2000s, right? They have been dealing with an open border for many years. It's just now it's getting a lot more national attention because the numbers are triple, quadruple what they were just a few years ago. But Texas cops have been rotating on the border for the better part of a decade down there. But I was really just kind of interested, like, okay, we see these fake images on TV, like, what is this going to be like working there, right? And my primary role down there was to be teamed up with a Texas detective. I was a detective as well, too. And what we would primarily do for 12-hour days is drive around. We look for certain type of cars and certain type of individuals that be good indicators that they were being basically trafficked from the border there, right? How it typically works is that, you'll cross, especially the dead heat of summer when it's super hot, you'll cross the border at night because it is a hard, treacherous landscape there. You get over the border at night, and then someone will get picked up right along those main highways the first thing in the morning when you get moved into some more of the inland Texas area. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I was assigned to the Del Rio sector, a little actually north of that there. And the area that I primarily worked was an area called Kinney County. In Kinney County, and I like numbers, right? Just because I think it helps put perspective there. Kinney County is a little county about a little over 3,000 to 4,000. I would equate it to the smallest county we have here in Iowa, which is Adams County, right? That's about a little over 3,000. So when we start our shift every morning, we go get our coffee first thing, and then either we would spot a car, or one of the team that we were working with would spot a car, and we'd call off to the main marked state patrol cruiser, which they would then try to stop the car, and pursuit would typically kick off. The car would then, after a certain amount of time, they'd bail out. Typically, the trafficker would be on the run for the most part, and those who were being trafficked would just hang out there because they knew they'd get basically rolled up by Border Patrol, right? So that was the morning, every morning, was trying to spot these cars that are picking up individuals. A lot of technology down there to spot, crossers. It's pretty neat how they're able to adapt to that. But I say this that when I give you the numbers up front of Kinney County being the size of Adams County, every day we would have between 3 and 5 vehicle pursuits, right? And I say that because if you would talk to a deputy in Adams County, they probably don't have 3 or 5 vehicle pursuits an entire year, let alone 2 years, right? So a county that size here in Iowa having that kind of law enforcement actions is, and metastasize that throughout, like the larger size here in Iowa, right? Like it is, those were numbers I couldn't fathom there, right? You count Bluffs PD, they might have a pursuit a week, right? But a small county like that, 3 to 5 a day on top. And that was just kind of where the routine was every day. You get up, get ready, start spot persons, and then just go on, so on and so forth. And just talking to the Texas cops down there a little bit, I'm trying to give some high-level takeaways down there. I say, has it always been this way? Down in the area. And they would say, we've always had some problems, but certainly the last few years it's been exasperated out of control, right? We talk about some of that stuff, later on here. But what I didn't understand, and one of the key takeaways I deliver to everyone here, right, is that when the cartel has always had routes to traffic people and routes to smuggle drugs across the border for decades. After COVID, when the executive order was rescinded, it would shut down the border, and when the state of Mexico policy was rescinded, basically the floodgates opened up for mass border crossings, right? And what happened on the southern part of the border, and that's probably more interesting than what happened on our side of the border, is that the cartel, who's had these routes and lanes for years, decided that looking at all the people crossing, that they could make just as much money off people crossing as they could drugs, if not more. So the cartel basically moved up into the border, and they seized control of the entire ground space of the border on that side, right? So what we used to think of, what normal illegal immigration would be, with a lot of migrant workers with agriculture ties would come across back and forth, or people would go visit their family in the winter times or something along those lines, right? That used to be, even myself too, I thought there's like a lot of normal illegal immigration that was occurring beyond what the exception was down there. But what I didn't understand was that once the cartel controlled the border, no one crosses anymore without the cartel's authorization. And every person that crosses is between $5,000 and $13,000 they have to pay an individual, depending on where your location is at. If you're a Mexican resident, then it's probably about $5,000. But they take advantage of people if you are a lot further south, where they know if you get turned around, you have no other options. So Venezuela further south, they'll charge $13,000 a person. And if you can't pay that, then they will move you across the border, and you have to basically work in a hotel or something like that in the Texas area, right? So I say that to say that it was really interesting from my standpoint that, you basically have a criminal organization that has basically metastasized into a military organization. They've seized control of the entire ground space, right? And I deliver that message here today because even if you, even if you built a wall, which we should, right? And even if you rescinded catch and release, which we should, I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things. The problem for the United States and this next administration, whoever it might be, is the fact that you actually have basically a quasi-military organization that has seized control of the entire ground space of the border, right? And that is a problem. And that organization right now, and I think Aaron will probably talk more to that because it's even gotten worse since I've been there, the Mexican military, the Mexican police have no ability to, at this point in time, take control of the border. I mean, the cartel is actually, when I was in Afghanistan, it's just crazy to see them right across the southern border. They're using IEDs, they're using drone strikes, they're doing anything they can to keep the Mexican military and police off that border because they can have control. Because frankly, they make as much money now off human trafficking as they do off the drugs in the past. And that's a big problem. And that is right on our southern border. So that's kind of what I want to talk about there, just a little bit of my experiences. And then what I would say, like the final story, right, is that the federal government has to do a better policy on this, this crisis at our border. Because every day, again, 3 to 5 pursuits that we would be involved. There's a partner. I mean, McKinney County is a large area, right? I talk about population. But at the end of the day, I remember there was one day in particular where, again, it's 110, 115 degrees, and we're outside for a while, on these pursuits and trying to traverse through woods and locate individuals. But once we would locate individuals, we turn them over to Border Patrol, right? I remember at the end of the day, one day we pulled to a gas station, it's kind of equivalent of a Casey's up here. And there was, I think, about 40-some individuals that you could tell just by their clothing and what they had in their bags that had crossed the border. They were not native Texas or anything. And I remember looking at my Texas DPS partner, and I'm like, what is going on here? And he looked at me, he's like, well, what do you think? I go, I don't know. He said, those are the people that we just basically picked up 2 days ago. And so all this chaos down there, of us getting border pursuits, we turn over Border Patrol, the catch and release policy, they just get released right up there, right? And so it's kind of depressing a little bit, like, my gosh, we go through all this here just to pull to a gas station, then, people are sent on their way for their court date down the road, whatever the case might be, but it's just a dysfunctional situation down there. It's not good for anyone. It's certainly not good for the people trying to cross, who definitely are trying, many of them are trying to make a better life with their own political issues down there. But the reality, like the situation that the federal government is allowed to progress for all these years, you've actually made it worse by putting these individuals in a position where their only way to cross anymore is the cartel, because we haven't done a good job on our side to strengthen that border, to make it more orderly, and provide a normal process for individuals to come to and from. So that's kind of like some of my opening comments. I have a couple other things I might talk about later on here, but those are the big things I just kind of want to key in a little bit. It's just a small county like Adams County, what happens that multiplied across the entire board there. Thank you.